Welcome to the Captain Crunchy podcast, and today we're going to be talking about all entertainment in the sports industries. My name is Carlos Perez, and here are my people.
My name's Diego Avila.
My name is James Shin.
And my name is Liam Akras.
So we got a couple of topics that we're going to discuss on today, and we're going to start with the Chelsea topic. This is right here. We'll go to Liam.
Alright, so I'm a big Chelsea fan. Been a fan since I was a little kid. And, recently our former owner, Roman Abramovich, he's essentially being forced to sell the club. He hasn't sold it quite yet, but, he's a Russian oligarch, and due to his ties with Vladimir Putin and the ongoing war with Russia and Ukraine, it's a bad look for Chelsea having him as their owner. And there's still, a lot of, there's not a lot of evidence that shows that these two, Roman Abramovich and Vladimir Putin, have a relationship. But considering his status in Russia and the wealth he has, it's hard to, look the other way.
Of course.
And, so not only that, but recently the UK government sanctioned Abramovich, and meaning they froze his assets. One of his assets is Chelsea, and this essentially is not good for the club. They're unable to buy new players, sell players, can't negotiate contracts, and we have a few guys who their contracts are running up, and so we can't re-sign those guys. The team has a limited budget to use for travel and hospitality for home fans. And so just as a fan, it's really hard to watch these games, and knowing these players and the coaches and all the staff have this cloud over their head of what's going on with their owner.
Right.
And it's just a lot to deal with.
I know they were sanctioned, correct? They say the money. Traveling wise, I know they weren't allowed to travel for a cup game, if I'm not mistaken, or was it a league game?
So they basically they weren't. It wasn't that they weren't allowed, but there was a game that they wanted to play behind closed doors because at the time of the game, they had only sold. At the time of the sanction, they had only sold a certain amount of tickets.
Right.
And they couldn't sell more tickets once they had been sanctioned. And so, there were going to be very few fans. And they wanted to play a game behind closed doors. It was a cup game against Middlesbrough. But the FA didn't let them. But with the travel, it's just a limited budget, I think, of £20,000, if I'm correct. And so, they were unsure whether they could take a plane to France for one of their Champions League games. But as far as I know, everything was figured out.
Right.
They're not releasing a whole lot of information to the public about that. But just as a fan, they also, I have a bunch of bidders coming in wanting to buy the club.
Have they have any recent bids right now so far?
Yeah, so they released a short list which had 4 bidders that they're willing to, they gave them their offer and they're willing to, negotiate. But one of these bidders was the Ricketts family, and the Ricketts family, they own the Cubs. But there was a lot of backlash with them because they have said some Islamophobic comments in the past. They essentially said...
So they're controversial as well.
Yeah, they said Islam is not a religion, it's a cult.
Jeez.
Wow.
So,
Oh my God.
yeah, and again, it wouldn't make sense for them to replace their current owner with, an owner that'll bring more backlash, considering they have several Muslim players on the
Right.
team. And so, there's just a lot of stuff going on, and, I'm sure the players are having a difficult time, focusing on playing while all
Right.
this controversy is going on. They're always being asked about it in the press. The coach
Yeah.
got really fed up with it.
Do you think that had to do with today's loss against Real Madrid 3-1? Do you think all that controversy around them, around the players, all that?
I'd want to say it had a big part, but I it's hard to say that it doesn't play a part in it.
Right.
Because it's happening. It's in their heads. No matter how much they say, "Oh, we're not thinking about it," it's
Right.
in their heads.
Of course, yeah. And you mentioned the Cubs, the family. What was in the family again?
Ricketts.
The Ricketts family. I think that's a good transition right now to go to the next topic that we have on the line, which is the NFL OT rule.
Yeah.
What do you think? Well, who do you have that for? You have Shin, correct? Shin, you are in the OT rule.
Yes, I'm talking about the NFL overtime rules. So I just want to give my own take on the whole Chelsea situation with your team and stuff like that. Honestly, I'm gonna say is just steer clear away from the controversy. Just like tell everybody who's trying to if I was at Chelsea, just tell everyone who's trying to cause lots of controversy about your team or your situation or all the other owners trying to buy your team. I would just tell them to shut up, leave us alone, and just let us play soccer. That's all I would say if I were them.
I wish it was that easy, man.
Yeah.
It's more complex when it comes down to that. But at the end of the day, it's it's what the team does for the better. But yeah, so the OT rule. Let's get into that. What do you have for us?
Okay, so therefore, alright, so it's about the NFL overtime rule. So to give the whole backstory is that the old NFL overtime rule is that in either both regular season and postseason games, the overtime rule would be the team who wins the coin toss is guaranteed a possession while in overtime, while the other team is not guaranteed a possession in overtime. And if the team who wins the coin toss scores a touchdown, then the game is over. So, and now that the new NFL overtime rule is that it just changed recently, by the way. In the postseason only, not regular season, both teams in the game are going to be guaranteed a possession in overtime. So all I want to ask is that just to give I just want to ask is that do y'all approve this change? Yeah. So first question is, do y'all approve of this new change? Because the thing is, as I said, both instead of just one team being guaranteed a possession in OT, both teams will be guaranteed a possession in OT. What do y'all think? Do y'all approve this or not?
In my opinion, I think it's a step in the right direction, but I think more can be done. I understand what the NFL is trying to do with the new overtime changes, but I think maybe there should be a playoff overtime set of rules. They're trying to limit the length of the games by not going to the college football rules, because the college football is you just go back and forth until someone doesn't score, basically.
Oh, okay, I see. I'd rather have that.
So yes, but you don't want to. So I understand what they're trying to do by limiting that, but in a sense, to me, they're kind of just delaying the coin toss, because if you're the person to win the toss and receive the ball first and you score, I mean, you're going to have more of an advantage than the second team, because after both teams have had a possession, the next team to score wins. So you're delaying, basically the old rule. So maybe in the playoffs, maybe they should change the OT rule to the college football rule. I think that would be better for the game. And I think it would just be more fair for both teams, in my personal opinion. But
I see.
Yeah, I mean,
Go ahead.
yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, you look at this old rule, and it's was it 90% of the time the team that wins the coin toss wins the game.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a high stat.
Yeah, it's ridiculously high, and that's just unfair to have a coin toss determine the
Exactly,
outcome of
yeah,
the game. So I think maybe split it up. Have a regular season playoff rule. I think this is okay for that. And then in the postseason, have the college football rule where you go back and forth, gives each team an equal chance. You don't have to worry about the coin toss. So.
Yeah, no, I believe the coin toss. For sure, I'm not a big American football fan. I mean, I watched it a little bit because of the Texans, but we always lose. Unfortunately, of course. But I feel like that's the right direction as well. Since in soccer, my sport that I know for sure, it's double over. You have double possession. So you start with whoever wins the coin toss gets the possession first, and then the next second part of the extra time goes for the other team. So in the end, it does make sense in my head because it already happens in the soccer world, I think. But I've seen in the football world adapting that. That's a big step. You have any other question that you
Yeah,
want?
I have another question. Yeah, because I would like a double overtime or even 3 OTs or even 4 OTs like in football and stuff like that. Even though it might be tiring, because like example like the NBA has like a double overtime, 3 overtime, 4 overtime, blah blah blah. So like Liam said, like how what vast majority of teams who win the coin toss and OT, they usually win the game in overtime. So therefore,
Which that stat is inflated 90%.
oh, okay, around
90%. That's
It's
around
ridiculous.
90%. That's
It's high.
that's a guesstimate, but so that brings me to my other question. So, in playoff games in the past that were won in overtime, specific, but
You good,
sorry about that. In playoff games in the past that were won in overtime by the team that won the coin toss in overtime. So therefore, just basically off a one and done possession in overtime. Would this rule have changed? Just say if like the games in the past had this rule instead of like had this current rule as opposed to the past rule, right? So would this rule have changed the fate of the games? So for example, like Super Bowl 51, where like the Patriots beat the Falcons in overtime, like where they just won the coin toss and immediately like destroyed the Falcons. Another example is that the recent Chiefs versus Bills game. Yeah, y'all saw that. It was a pretty epic game. So therefore, where the Chiefs just won off one possession in OT and stuff like that. Do you think that y'all? Do you think this new rule, if it was implemented like way back then, do you think it would have like changed the fate of many games or what?
Oh, most definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah.
100%,
All of them,
man.
every single one of them.
Well, I wouldn't say every single one of them, but I would say at least most of them.
But it gives you an advantage at the end of the day.
Yup.
Like we all seen that the stat is really high up, and at the end of the day, it's like if you have a stat that proves that having possession will give you a game advantage, it's kind of playing with handicap. So if it's equal, like you're saying, they're adding the double, so that makes more sense. Which everybody has a sequel opportunity.
And it's not even a matter of changing the result. It's just a matter of giving each team a fair chance.
Exactly, yeah.
Sure. Let's say you go to the Chiefs and Bills game. Let's say Chiefs still win that game. Well, at least Josh Allen got to take the field in overtime.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's one reason why I approved this, because like this the pass overtime rule. Yeah, it's pretty not fair, because like most of the time like the other team, they won't even like be able to touch the football. So yeah, another reason I approve of this rule is because these new rules, because it gives both teams a better chance to win the game and save their season. In other words, yeah.
Yeah, no, 100%, and I think that gives us. I say we go into more controversy. More controversy in the NFL world. How about that?
Yeah.
Let's talk about the Cowboys.
When is the Cowboys not involved in some sort of controversy?
That is facts. That is. So we're transitioning back into the Dallas Cowboys' daughter. What's the topic on that? What's the controversy there?
So, as y'all know, there's controversy with Dallas Cowboys, America's team.
Every time.
So their head honcho right now, Jerry Jones, is under the spotlight currently. A woman of the name Alexandra Davis recently came out and is filing a lawsuit against Jerry Jones, stating that he is her biological father. So to this point, he's paid her $3 million to her and the mom. He's bought the daughter like a $70,000 Range Rover and paid for her full tuition at SMU.
So wait, there's no there's evidence that this guy knows that that's his daughter.
There is evidence that he possibly he can't explain the payments right now. Like he always says no comment
you
on it, so.
paid a tuition for this woman. You've given her Range Rovers. Like, dude.
Helping her mom out.
Yeah, I know,
bro.
exactly.
I feel that's too obvious. Too obvious.
So all signs are pointing to that being true.
Isn't
So-
she trying to get like a DNA test, right? Did
I
hear
think
that
so.
right? I
Yes,
think
he's
there's
trying to
something
get her
about
to.
that.
Yep.
And she's suing him.
Yep.
After all that thing, she's suing him.
Yeah.
So what does this do to the team?
So exactly, and that's why I was bringing it up, because I'm curious what y'all think as far as like, okay, so the NFL draft is at the end of this month, and this kind of got brought up like last month. So right in the prime, like you got the combine going on, you got all the NFL pro days, you got the visits and stuff, and Jerry Jones being the owner and GM, general manager, he's usually right in the midst of like all of that, kind of like building the board.
Yeah.
And, he's got the final say on things. So I was just wondering to y'all, like I wanted to ask y'all, do y'all think this affects their draft? You think this is going to affect their draft on the players they select? And if so, do you think it's going to be a positive impact or a negative impact?
I mean, personally, you know, I don't think it would have that much of an impact. Like, yeah, he does. You know, he is, always in the spotlight because, on these draft days, he's always got a camera on him. Every time they talk about the Cowboys, they'll pan to the camera showing Jerry walking
war
around his
room.
little suite or whatever, or his yacht. He was on a boat once, right?
Yeah, he was.
One of them. So, he's always on the spotlight, and sure, they might be mentioning it as they're, discussing these players, but, from a picking standpoint, I don't see why it would affect who they pick. People still want to play for, and also in terms of players, people still want to play for the Cowboys. Most of these guys are Cowboys fans growing up, a lot. So, from that standpoint, I don't think it's going to be a big issue, but I could be wrong. I don't know if you guys disagree. Think it will.
What do you think, Shane?
Well, continue.
No, you go ahead.
Okay, so honestly, like you said, I really don't think it'll have an impact on the team at all, nor the players, whoever they draft, because the thing is, like, just say like a rookie who never had anything to do with the Dallas Cowboys or anything like that. They're probably new to Dallas and stuff like that. They'll just definitely like steer clear away from that situation. Just like an example, especially like when they just want to focus on football, like or they just want to make their team better and they just want to better their game. This whole thing, to the players it's a huge distraction. Like to the fans, it may be a huge distraction, as well as to the organization. Yeah, it can be a huge distraction, but to the players, no, it's definitely not a huge distraction at all. The only time I've ever seen like an effective and like a controversial effect around the draft is just only on the players, because like example like Nick Bosa, like he made some like controversial tweets a few years ago, and he was like, and he got drafted by San Francisco, so therefore it had to have him change his ways, just in the media and stuff like that. I don't know about as a person, but like in the media it had to have him change his ways, so therefore I would say no, because like this won't have any effect on their players.
I think it does, but at the same time I see the positive in it by you kind of allow these guys that you hired, you allow the pros, the professionals that like got hired on and getting paid millions to do this,
finally do their job.
Yes,
Finally do their job. Yeah.
Finally able to do their job.
Yep.
So there's positive and negatives to it, because it can be distracting for that front office. Maybe not the players. Players probably don't care. Like it's the owner doing his thing, but I got my thing.
Not like a huge controversial thing. Like,
Yeah.
It's like he left his daughter out he didn't even leave his daughter out in the dust. He paid for college, gave her a lot of money.
More of like a family thing. Like I'm sure it's like destroying like inside the home for sure.
Like,
Yeah.
As an image for the Dallas Cowboys, it wouldn't affect it compared to like your owner being associated with the president of Russia.
Russia,
Like, that's
yeah.
a way. That's more like you don't
That's
want to
heavier.
be related to that.
Yeah.
as
No.
much.
Most
But
definitely.
no, definitely, it lets the guys you actually pay to scout to do player analysis,
Stats, get the
GM
stats, yeah.
whatever. It lets those guys really finally have a
Do their job.
bigger say
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
Yeah,
their
finally
job.
do their job. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
And I'm not even familiar with how much football experience Jerry Jones has. Like, did he play at all?
He did. He played back in Arkansas, but I don't think he played professionally.
Yeah.
But he did play in Arkansas. But like, when was that? Like 1960 or 7? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. But it's been.
all right. Well, that's it for the time right now that we have synced in with Captain Crunchy. Hopefully you enjoyed the show. Thank you guys for tuning in.
Thank you.